Well, I was hoping I'd hear from Aunt Donna during this crazy time of COVID-19 quarantine. Iowa has been a little controversial in its closings and openings, and I was wondering how they were doing out there in Albert City. In case you missed my other letters from home sermons, let me tell you a bit about them. My husband Rod, his Aunt Donna, lives on their family farm homestead in Albert City, Iowa, which is in the far northwestern corner of Iowa. It's a farming community with a population of 699 and was established in 1890 on property owned by George Anderson. The town was initially called Manthorpe after a town in Sweden. However, the post office department was concerned that the town's name would be confused with the nearby community of Marathon, so Manthorpe was renamed for Albertina Anderson, the founder's wife. The town has maintained its Swedish heritage and flair, which one sees as in the town, as when you enter the town, the sign reads, "Welcome to Albert City, how Swede it is." In addition to being the site of Iowa's worst gun battle in 1901, the museum in Albert City is located in the former Chicago, Milwaukee, and Pacific Railroad Albert City Station, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. These letters are my attempt at imitating Garrison Keillor, who wrote about the fictitious but rather famous people of Lake Wobegon, Minnesota. For the purposes of my letters, there are two different Lutheran churches in Albert City, one in the town and one more rural. Pastor Martin Dietschy, ordained about 10 years ago, is the pastor of Elm Street Lutheran Church out in the country, and Pastor Carl Skogsberg, ordained over 30 years ago, is the pastor of First Lutheran Church in town. Here's the letter from Aunt Donna. Dear Sue and Rod, my, oh my, whoever said life in Iowa is boring has never met my dear friend Cora Nyberg and my gaggle of friends from First Lutheran. Cora never ceases to amaze me, but this time she's outdone herself. At the beginning of March, she declared that she's not getting any younger and she wanted to go to the one place in Iowa she'd always wanted to go, but still hadn't. With the uncertainty of COVID-19 and all the places that were closing for a while, she decided she would leave on Wednesday, March 11 for Denison, Iowa, to see the Donna Reed Heritage Museum. Her plan was to pick up her sister Anna, who lives in Ida Grove, Iowa, and the two of them were going to spend a few days living it up in Denison. She said she'd be back by Friday or Saturday, depending on how much fun they were having. Cora said, if Anna still talks in her sleep like she did when we were kids, I'll be back on Friday. Do you know who Donna Reed is? She's a famous actress who was born and raised in Denison, Iowa. She starred in many movies, but the one she's best known for is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. That's one of my favorite movies. The Donna Reed Museum is one of the best attractions in Denison. Well, probably the only attraction. When Cora, Louise, Edith, and I met for breakfast at Thelma's Diner the day before she left, she reassured us that she was well prepared for this exciting road trip. She packed a cooler so she and Anna could eat lunch along the way. She made reservations at a bed and breakfast near the museum, and the weather looked good for the next week. We wished her a great trip, told her to take lots of pictures, and to call us when she got back. We didn't hear from her on Friday, but we figured her sister didn't talk in her sleep anymore and they were just having a good time. I started to get worried when Cora didn't call on Saturday or Sunday. Neither Edith nor Louise heard from Cora either, so we called Cora's husband, Lars. He didn't answer the phone, so Edith left a message on their answering machine. We figured Lars was out getting the fields ready for planting, so she told him to call her when he got back in. By Monday afternoon, I called Pastor Dietschy Cora's pastor, because she goes to that other Lutheran church, to see if he knew anything of Cora's whereabouts. His wife Shannon answered the phone and said Pastor Dietschy had been called down to Denison for an emergency. I asked her if it was about Cora, and she said yes, but that Cora and Anna are okay and not to worry. Not to worry? Of course I'll worry, I told her. Shannon said that Pastor Dietschy would be home in a few hours and he would call me. I gave her my home number and my cell phone number because I was going to meet Louise at Thelma's Diner for supper, and I didn't want to miss Thelma's peach pie or Pastor's phone call. Around 6:30, Pastor Dietschy walked into the diner with Cora, Lars, and their son Dan, and their daughter-in-law Kim. Cora's face was all bruised, and she walked slowly with a cane. I immediately called Edith and told her to get over to Thelma's Diner right away. Cora was back, but she'd been hurt. We moved over to the big round table so everyone could sit down and hear what happened. Cora said that the Donna Reed Museum was absolutely wonderful, and she and Anna had a marvelous time, and that Anna no longer talks in her sleep. We all just stared at her for a while she rambled on about Donna Reed and the great food at the bed and breakfast. Finally, I couldn't stand it any longer, and I said, Cora, what happened to you? She said, well, I got kidnapped. Kidnapped? We all said, what? Cora said that Friday afternoon, while Anna was taking a nap, she decided to drive to the Piggly Wiggly to get some fresh fruit for their 3 o'clock snack. She said the bakery there had the most scrumptious chocolate chip scones she'd ever eaten, so she picked up a few of those too. Well, just then, Edith and her husband Clement walked into the diner, and I said, Cora got kidnapped, sit down and have some pie. Go ahead, Cora, keep the story coming. Cora said, I parked around the back of the bed and breakfast and was reaching in the inside of the car for the bag of groceries I had put in the passenger side. As I leaned in, I was pushed so hard from the side by a young man that I fell over the console and into the passenger seat. I clunked my head on the window and hurt my shoulder. The young man got into the driver's seat and took off with me in the car. After I got my wits about me, the first thing I did, of course, was to ask him his name. Thelma brought us all peach pie with homemade vanilla ice cream and filled our cups with piping hot coffee. Louise said, well, of course, Cora, when taken hostage, wouldn't we all begin by asking our attacker's name? I myself would have screamed and yelled. Cora said that somehow, by the grace of God, she remained calm. His name was Mark, she went on. So I said, Mark, why are you doing this? I'm kidnapping you so we can go to the ATM and get money out of your account. How do you know I have an ATM card? I saw you use it at the grocery store. Mark told me he needed money for drugs. At least he was honest about it. I'll give him that. I said to him, Mark, it's a terrible thing to be a drug addict. It's not the way God wants you to be living your life. Thelma sat down to listen after she got us all coffee and said, well, Cora, when being kidnapped, at least make the conversation an honest one. Well, by then, Cora said they had arrived at the first ATM, and Mark asked me for my passcode. I had to think a minute because my head hurt a lot and I was slightly frazzled. He apologized for doing this, but there was no other way for him. I told him, Mark, there was another way. He didn't much care to hear about that right then. So I gave him my passcode and he took out some money. Then he sped away to another bank to get more money because apparently there's a limit to how much money you can take at one time. So then I said, Mark, this drug problem is bigger than you can handle. You need God's help. God loves you, Mark, and wants to help you. Mark ignored what I was saying and got more money from the next ATM. I told him there wasn't all that much money in my account, but apparently there was enough for him. Since I was no longer useful to him, Mark pulled the car to the side of the street and told me to get out of the car and he was going to leave me there. I said, before you go, Mark, I want you to know that I'm going to pray for you, that you get caught for doing this because it's wrong, and you shouldn't get away with doing this to people. I'm also going to pray that you will be caught so I can testify that you did this but also so I can tell the judge to get you into a really good drug rehab program. You need God to give you strength to get off drugs and have a better life. Mark was going to leave me there, but I told him I couldn't get out of the car because I thought my shoulder was broke from when he pushed me into the passenger seat. So Mark came around to my side of the car and helped me get out of the car and into the driver's seat. Then he put my seatbelt across me and said he was sorry he hurt me. He ran off, and I drove back to the bed and breakfast. Anna called the police, and I was taken by ambulance to the hospital. I spent a few days there so they could keep an eye on me. My shoulder isn't broken, just badly bruised, and that's what happened. We stayed at Thelma's Diner for an hour because Cora wanted to tell us all about the Donna Reed Museum. Plus, she brought back some more chocolate chip scones, which were really delicious. Dan and Kim drove Cora and Lars home and said they would take Cora to the doctor tomorrow, just to be sure. 2 weeks later, Cora was contacted by the Denison Police Department to see if she could identify Mark from a lineup. Mark had attacked other people in Denison and was finally caught. Last week, Cora had to go to the courthouse in Denison to testify against Mark. She told us that she decided to walk up to the judge and talk a few minutes with him in front of everyone in the courtroom. Cora said, "Yes, Judge, Mark is the one, and yes, he really did those things. I'm here to say that I would like Mark to get into a good drug rehab program so he can get his life back together again. I have been praying for Mark, and I know Mark is guilty, but he really needs help for his addiction more than he needs to spend time in jail." Cora told me that after she left the courtroom, a woman was crying, had come up to her and thanked her for praying for Mark. It was Mark's mother. She told Cora that she had watched the life drain out of Mark because of drugs for over the last 5 years. Mark had been in the grip of those evil drugs, and nothing she said or did made a difference to him. 2 years ago, Mark left home, and she hadn't heard from him until he called her to tell her he'd gotten arrested. These last few years, she wasn't sure if he was alive or dead. We cried and prayed together that Mark would turn back to God and claim the life that God had always wanted for Mark. Well, we've been meeting by Zoom for noon Bible study. Hard to believe us 70 and 80-year-olds can master that technology. Anyway, last week it was Pastor Dietschy's turn to lead, and we read Philippians 4 through 9. I just love those verses. We all decided that Cora had indeed let her gentleness be known, and that the Lord had been near to her while she was being kidnapped. Cora said that she knew God had kept her from being afraid, and that while she prayed without ceasing, she felt God's peace guarding her heart and mind. She hoped that Mark learned a thing or two from Cora, so that Mark would feel God's peace with him too. Pastor Dietschy said, Lutheran theologian Philip Jacob Spener once wrote, "We are to be different because Christ is in us. The world is to be different because we are in it." Pastor then said, "Cora, you spoke the grace and peace of Jesus into Mark's life. God was with you, keeping you calm and giving you just the right words to say to him. The world is different because you are in it. Thanks be to God." Then we all thought about that question. How different is the world because I'm in it? That's a good question for all of us to ask, isn't it? Well, that's the latest from Albert City, Iowa. I hope you and your family are staying well and that you're all adjusting to being home so much. Give my love to the people of Christ Lutheran Church and to your family, and of course, come and see us anytime. I'll keep the light on. Love always, Aunt Donna. Let us sing together the sermon hymn, verses 1, 3, and 5.